welcome to Luminar Coffee Break. I'm Angela Andrieux, and today I'm going to show you how to edit a nighttime cityscape photo two different ways. We got an image submitted by one of our insiders, Donette Largay. She sent me this really cool picture that she took from, I think it was like the 93rd floor of a building over a city, and it's a really, really cool shot, and I wanted to share it with you today and show you a couple of different ways that I would edit this photo. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. So I have up on the screen both versions of this photo. I did one in color and one in black and white. And let me show you how I did it. Since we don't have virtual copies available in Luminar AI, I wish we did. Hopefully one day we will. What I did was I went on the first one, I right click and I say show in Finder. And that's going to bring up my file system. Here's my original CR2 Canon RAW file. All I did was right click on that and duplicate, and I ended up with a second CR2 file on my hard drive. Now both of those CR2 files are showing here in Luminar, and I can edit them two different ways. So what I'm going to do on both of these here is go to Adjustments, Revert to Original, and same on my second one. So here, Adjustments, Revert to Original, and you can see that they're the exact same file, just duplicated copy. Hello Jerry, hello Pat. So glad you guys are able to join me today. Love seeing those familiar names pop up in the chat. Okay, so let's do the first one. I'm going to go to Templates, and I'm going to scroll down to this big city lights category. Now, I landed on Frosty for this one. I like the tones that it creates. I think it adds a nice boost of contrast. So I'm going to roll with this one and then refine it from here. Next, I'm going to go to Edit and let that load up. And let's go to Enhance AI. I'm going to bring that up maybe a little bit more. And then we're going to go here to our composition. Now you'll notice we're looking down on the city instead of looking up at buildings. So when we're down on street level, typically we're looking up at buildings, and so the distortion we have to correct in an image like that, the buildings are usually going to be leaning in. If you notice in this particular image, because we're looking down, those buildings are leaning out. So unfortunately, our perspective correction, the automatic adjustments here don't work as well as I would like. So we're going to do this manually. So first thing, let's look at the horizon. We see that the horizon is a little bit crooked, so let's straighten that out. And I'm just eyeballing it with the grid that pops up over the image. That looks pretty good. Now we'll go down to our 3D transform. And this is where you're gonna have to give this vertical slider quite a lot of attention. We're gonna pull that up to, I think, about 38. And you'll see that now we have those buildings straightened. Everything looks really, really good. But the feedback that I got from Donette, because this is her image, was that we did cut off that intersection that was at the bottom of the frame. When you do perspective corrections, there's a bit of give and take, and the give is that you get to straighten out those buildings. What the take is it takes away some of that information along the edges of the image to allow you to straighten that out. I'm going to go ahead and roll with it in this particular way because I like how it straightened out all the buildings. I think it looks really good. Now let's go ahead and close up Composition AI, let that composition apply, and we'll go down to our structure. So an image like this, we can see that there was already a little bit of structure added from our template. I'm going to add a bit more because I love a really good contrasty cityscape image. Let's go ahead and pull that up really high there. That looks really nice. And let's take this down a little bit farther here. Let's go to our mystical and maybe bring that up a little bit. Now, as we bring up mystical, you'll notice we're actually getting a little bit of a softening effect, which isn't really what I'm going for here, but I do want that kind of shininess that mystical adds. So I'm going to take the smoothness slider and pull this back down and bring back all of that detail that was there. So we get a little bit of that glow without losing the detail. So that makes for a really, really cool image. I like where that's at. Let's take a look at our before and our after. Pretty significant change. Now let's go back to our catalog and do this, but make it a black and white. So what I want to do is I'm going to right click on this image, go to my adjustments, copy those adjustments, click on to my second image here, let that load up, come on, and then adjustments and paste my adjustments. So this is going to copy all of those adjustments I just made from that first image, including my perspective corrections, onto the second image. Now we can go over to edit and convert this one to a black and white. So go ahead and let that load up here for a moment. And then once that's active, we can go ahead and select our black and white tool. There we go, black and white, and convert to black and white. Now, when we do this, we have our luminance and saturation sliders. If you wanted to make this a selective color image, you could go over to saturation and bring back some of those selected colors. In this instance, I want to use the luminance sliders, which will allow me to lighten and darken areas that had been color. So if you take a look at the before, we had a lot of yellows, a lot of oranges in this image, and even some blues. So what I want to do actually is darken down that blue, and you'll see that's darkening down that sky, or you can lighten it up if you like it, but I think a little bit darker is nice. And then we can alter the way those yellows and oranges are coming through with our yellow and red sliders. So I'm going to darken those down, bring those highlights down a bit, and adjust a little bit of those red hues, and I'm brightening those up a bit. And that just makes our black and white a bit more contrasty. So let's take a look here at the before and our after. All right, Pat says, I wonder why that one building near the upper right is leaning so out in keeping with the other buildings. I think it's just to do with where they were placed in the line of sight, and also from being taken from up above, because we're looking down on the city as opposed to looking up. And also it looks a little bit more off because if you zoom in and look here, we're looking at particular towers, and it feels a little bit like it's leaning out because it's a little bit thicker down here, and then it gets a little bit more narrow and more narrow even still here. I think overall though, it is pretty straight. So I suppose those things are all up to interpretation. Like, go ahead and zoom in here. I could pull that back a little bit if you think it's a little bit too far. Maybe even push that a little bit farther. There, I think that's even better. All right, we'll go ahead and roll with that. Pull that off of there. Now let's scroll down to our super contrast and work a little bit more with our contrast. So I'm going to add a little bit more contrast highlights here, or highlights of the contrast, and bring up that balance a little bit, adjust that around until I get some nice bright whites. And take a look at our midtones here, bring that up a bit, adjust that balance. That looks pretty cool. And ooh, I like that, opening up the shadows a little bit, but then changing the balance there so we keep those nice rich blacks. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Now, if you want to really finish this off, go up to your light tool and take a look at the blacks and whites, and we can brighten up those whites a tiny bit more and darken down those most extreme blacks a little bit more, and that gives us a really, really rich black and white image. So let's take a look there at the before and the after. So we've taken an image. I did this 2 different ways because I couldn't decide honestly which one I liked better. So I figured I would ask you guys, and ask Donette as well, whether she liked our black and white or our color image. And you can see that our rotation was a little bit off because we did do that extra little bit of adjustment on the second one. So there's the color, there's the black and white, and then here is our original. So either way, it's a huge change, and I really like both of them. You know, I'm thinking that bit of rotation, our rotation of the image didn't come across when we synced those adjustments, but our transform changes did. So what we can do is go back over to edit, and I'm going to go here to view my film strip, and that's going to let me see both images that are in that folder. Let's take a look at our black and white here. Go back up here to Composition AI. That load up. There we go. And let that give me my grid here over the image. One moment. There we go. And yep, the horizon didn't get straightened. So let's straighten that back out. There we go. That looks good. And then from there, I'm going to take that and put that back at 38, which is where we had the original image. I'll hit return on my keyboard. And there we go. That looks a lot better. All right, Jerry said, Jerry would like to know how to show the histogram with the highlight alerts. Great question. You can go up to View and Show Histogram. And to get the highlight alerts, you can either hit the J key on your keyboard, or you can click the little arrows in the corner of the histogram. So in looking at this image, we have a lot of very, very black shadows. Everything that's in blue is a clipped shadow. Everything in red is a clipped highlight. However, when I look at this image as a whole, it doesn't bother me that I'm losing detail in some of those areas. I think all of the important areas of detail are there. That's a very subjective call. You could flatten out the image a little bit more to bring out more of those details in the shadows and then the highlights if you wished. Let's take a look at our color image and see the same thing. So let's go ahead and hit the J key on this one once it loads up. There we go. And you see we also have a lot of clipped shadows in this one and just a handful of clipped highlights in the absolute brightest areas. I think it looks really good though. If I turn that off, we're looking at these areas that are clipped. Those are dark windows. So there's really not a whole lot of detail to be had there anyway. So I think that it's not really a problem. Again, it's very subjective. If you wanted to flatten out those areas a little bit more, bring out a little bit more detail, that's certainly up to you, and you can do that. A great way to do that is either going to be here in the light tool, or if you scroll down, it would be here under super contrast. So those are the ways that you can manipulate those a little bit, either in the color or the black and white, to make that contrast fit your desire. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments which one you like better, the color or the black and white. I think last week when I did this show for insiders, I was really liking the color. Today, I'm really, really liking the black and white. So let me know what you think, what you would prefer, and if you would do something different. I love to hear that as well. It also gives me ideas for future episodes. So if there's something that you want to learn more about, keep those questions coming. We're here to make episodes for you and to make your life easier. So let me know what you want to learn. If you have questions, pop them in the comments. If you like the show, make sure you give us a thumbs up here on YouTube. And I mentioned a little bit ago that this image came from one of my viewers on Insiders. If you're not on Insiders, you should be. So go to insiders.skylum.com. The only requirement is that you have to own Luminar AI. It's free to join, and it's one of the coolest places on the internet to hang out. You get to hang out with a bunch of other photographers, really cool people. I hope to see you there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I wish you guys a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.